All right. Well, President Biden, for his part, is saying that pretty much Democrats are all on board with the spending plan as it stands right now. Now, at this point, and given some of the tone and remarks we've heard of the likes of Bernie Sanders and others, that does not appear to be the case right now. They have serious reservations about this, so they're not all in. This guy wasn't from the very, very beginning. South Carolina Republican Senator Tim Scott, kind enough to join us right now. Senator, good to see you.
Thank you, Neil. Thanks for having me back on your show. I miss you.
Thank you, my friend. Let's talk a little bit about where Democrats stand on this, because I know you're a no vote by and large on the larger spending package that they're talking about here. That seems to be unanimous among your colleagues. But I do want to get your thoughts on the infrastructure-only package. Now, you were not among the 19 Republicans who were on board with that in the Senate, so I'm sure it would not change now, your view, looking at how the House handles this. But is it your sense that some of those 19 have changed their minds on that and now beginning to say, all right, if it ever came to us again, or certainly with this larger spending measure, if this is a sign of things to come, we're out?
I do think there's a loss of trust between the Biden administration and the bipartisan coalition that supported the infrastructure package. Early on, you heard that these were two separate votes, and then they were fused together, then they were not, and now they are again. So that confusion,
could you explain that to me, Senator? I was talking to a producer, and have they indeed been put back together? Because that would negate the need to even vote on an infrastructure-only package today. I would imagine Democrats would have a problem with that as well, wouldn't they?
Well, the progressives have said that they are not willing to move forward unless it's all in one. And so what they've been discussing over the last several days is whether or not having a vote now with a promise in the future is fusing those two together. Some in the Democrat Party say that you have to have both of those votes together, which means that the consensus for one is a prerequisite for the first vote. So in my opinion, and frankly, those shared by most people on both sides of the aisle, that's bringing those two back together. But the lack of confidence and transparency in this process should be concerning to every single American. An infrastructure package that spends less than 10% of the overall resources on roads and bridges over the next 5 years should be concerning. We're back to the days where you have to pass the legislation to know what's in it. That's bad news for every single American, and it feels like the great American shakedown, especially as we move into the larger, more problematic package.
You know what's interesting on it, Senator, and you know these details far better than I, is that the president has been saying that economists say this is all paid for, don't have to worry. But how would he know that? Because this is very different than what was originally talked about. It's half the price. There are a lot more revenues than thought, raisers than was the case. So it's very different than anything before. And we don't even know what this final, package is. So where is he getting that information?
Well, out of thin air, to be honest with you. There's no way in the world you can call this package paid for. Not only has he said it's paid for, but he also says it costs nothing. So costing nothing and being paid for means taking more money out of the pockets of working Americans, on top of the already negative impact of inflation for many Americans well below $400,000. Their gas prices have gone from $1.99 in December to $3.23 when I filled up in Charleston just this past Monday. So on top of that, we're going to see a $1.75 trillion package that's paid for by higher taxes. And higher taxes does not necessarily mean raising the statutory rate. It means eliminating deductions and credits in order to generate the revenue, or having a new excise tax on the wealthy people. If you remember back to the Obama administration, we talked about taxing millionaires and billionaires, or they did, I didn't. It started at $250,000. That's not a millionaire or a billionaire. And so this tax is going to be a problem. But Neil, remember that the price of $1.75 trillion is bad. The cost will well exceed the $1.75 trillion, but the content fundamentally transforms America and creates a one-way ticket to socialism when you start looking at what's actually in the package and how it disincentivizes work. That's a real issue for our labor force participation rate and the growth of our GDP that translates into more money in the pockets of everyday Americans working their tails off. That's just a wrong direction for our nation, and it's a wrong direction that we're sending from a signal perspective for the next generation of workers.
All right, I'm going to put you down as a maybe on the package then, Senator, because something else came up. I'm kidding. But to raise this point, I know you were concerned about this IRS, bank accounting monitoring.
Yes.
As far as I know, Senator, looking at some of the details they have released, that's still in there. Not as onerous, at a higher level, but it's still in there, as well as the funding to beef up IRS enforcement that presumably go well beyond just tracking what the rich pay. That feature could be particularly onerous, but where do you see that going?
Well, that is an awful feature of the bill. That's one of the reasons why the content is worse than the cost. When you talk about giving the IRS permission to spy into every single account that has $10,000 of inflow, outflow, if you're making minimum wage, you're putting into your accounts more than $10,000 on an annual basis. So that means every single working American in this country will have to fear the three letters you never want to see in your mailbox, IRS, as they have more opportunities to spy on your accounts. And a part of that proposal, in addition to allowing the IRS to have access to your financial information, would be $80 billion more to the IRS with the specific purpose of more audits of your accounts and your business accounts. That sends shivers down the spine. If anything does, the IRS will do that to the average American. And that's an additional burden, not on those making over $400,000, for everybody making minimum wage.
Senator, very quickly, the administration has turned the inflation argument and gone on offense with it, that Americans are making more, they're spending more. This is all a demand issue coming out of the pandemic. It's a good reflection on America. It's not a government spending kind of an issue. It's people spending, buoyed by being flatlined during the pandemic, coming out and spending a lot more on things because they can and they will. What did you think of that?
Well, from the great philosopher Trey Gowdy, we call that hogwash. To be honest with you, here's what they're saying, is that we're going to add $2 trillion from the COVID package into the economy, add another $1.2 trillion, and then add another $2 trillion on top of that nearly. And what does that do? It drives your demand up and your supply is relatively stable. That means that the price for everything goes up. But in addition to that, let's just stop the Keystone Pipeline. Let's stop American pursuit of our own energy independence, and let's become more dependent on the Middle East for our oil. Your gas prices go up from $1.99 to $3.23, just like, as I said, this past Monday. But on top of that, the prices of fish, fruit, meat, all heading towards double digit. You're buying dresses, almost 20%. You're buying shoes, almost 10%. If you're on a fixed income in America, your buying power has gone down faster than your wages have gone up because of inflation. There's no way to spin that into a positive when the average American feels the difference in their accounts. They see with their own eyes. You can't tell them what they can already see.
All right, very good seeing you, Senator Chip Scott. We're running out of time because I did want to ask you what the heck has happened to Clemson's football team, but that's for another conversation. Okay.
Challenges.
Very good seeing you. It challenges. That's one word for it. Tim Scott, beautiful state of South Carolina, sits on the Senate Finance Committee, other important committees as well.